Once upon a time, in a village in ancient India.
The movie begins with Lama Norbu telling his young disciples ancient tales about karma and reincarnation.
To the gods. He raised his arm to cut the goat's throat,
emphasizing that no living creature should ever be sacrificed.
Must never be sacrificed.
As he reads a message that arrives for him, his face lights up with joy. He has been waiting for this moment for 9 years. The message is about his late teacher, Lama Dorje.
Have they found him? Perhaps.
Setting off on his journey, Lama Norbu encounters a mysterious man who presents him with a bowl, claiming that it once belonged to Lama Dorje and that he will need it for his search.
You will need it for your search.
Arriving in Seattle, he is led to a house by a monk named Kempo Tenzin. The monk tells Lama Norbu about strange, vivid dreams that began months after Lama Dorje's passing. In these dreams, Lama Dorje always takes him to an empty hillside. A month ago, the monk discovered the very site from his dream, now occupied by a newly built house belonging to a family with one child named Jesse. Coincidentally, Jesse was born exactly 1 year after Lama Dorje's death. The monks joke about Lama Dorje wearing jeans in the dreams. 3 weeks prior, the monk approached Jesse's mother and gave her his card.
May I give you this card, please?
Thank you. Jesse!
When the doorbell rings, she rushes downstairs, recognizing him from their earlier meeting. The monk introduces her to Lama Norbu and explains that he has come on a special mission from Bhutan. She invites them in and mentions that they moved into the house just a week ago. As they converse in the living room, Jesse's father returns home and joins the discussion. Lama Norbu briefly shares the history of Tibet, explaining how their people settled in Bhutan alongside their neighboring brothers, Nepal and India, after the 1959 occupation. He then introduces the concept of reincarnation in Tibetan Buddhism, where life continues in an endless cycle, and occasionally a special soul returns. He reveals that they are searching for Lama Dorje's reincarnation, just as Jesse walks in. Jesse's mother invites him to say hello, but the boy quickly runs off. Lama Norbu then surprises the couple by suggesting that Jesse might be the reincarnation of Lama Dorje.
But now we think he might have been reborn right here as your son.
Before leaving, Lama Norbu hands Jesse a book, telling him it will be his guide. Later, Jesse begins reading Little Buddha, the story of Prince Siddhartha. As he bathes, his mother reads the book aloud to him. The movie then transitions to 2,500 years ago, depicting the birth of the Buddha in ancient India.
As was the custom in those days, his mother, Queen Maya, was returning to her parents' home.
Queen Maya, returning to her parents' home for childbirth, stops at the edge of a vast forest with her royal caravan. She recalls a vision from the previous night of a baby elephant entering her belly from her side. Deep in the forest, she experiences labor pains and, while holding onto a tree branch, gives birth. The newborn, with golden skin and full consciousness, is strong enough to stand on his feet, and lotus blossoms bloom in his footsteps.
It is said, lotus blossoms grew in his footsteps.
The movie shifts back to the present, where Jesse's parents discuss reincarnation casually. Meanwhile, Dean, Jesse's father, expresses frustration over his best friend and business partner going bankrupt, fearing that they might lose their house. Jesse calls for his mother to continue reading, and the movie returns to ancient India, where Siddhartha's naming ceremony is taking place. The revered astrologer Asita, who has not been seen in years, arrives and proclaims that the child will one day become a great master.
Who knows that he will not live long enough to learn from the teachings of your son?
The king, however, insists that Siddhartha will follow in his footsteps and become a ruler.
and be a king.
It may be as you wish, but the gods often betray the wishes of mortal men.
1 week later, Queen Maya falls gravely ill and passes away. Back in the present, Jesse embarks on a journey with Lama Norbu. Curious about his connection to Lama Dorje, Jesse asks if he could truly be his reincarnation. Lama Norbu reassures him that it is possible. Upon arriving at a temple, they stand before a grand Buddha statue. Lama Norbu tells Jesse that Siddhartha was once just a prince who married the beautiful Princess Yasodhara and became a skilled horseman and archer.
Siddhartha. And he married the beautiful princess Yashodhara.
The film transitions again to young Prince Siddhartha, playing an ancient game called Kabaddi. The king shields him from any knowledge of suffering, surrounding him only with luxury. One day, Siddhartha hears a mysterious song and follows the voice to find a woman singing about mountains and lakes. Curious, he asks his wife about the outside world. She reveals that beyond the palace walls, there is only suffering. Siddhartha, confused, asks, "What is suffering?" The queen tries to convince him to stay within the palace, but he insists that he must see the world with his own eyes, as he has never even seen his own city. Meanwhile, Jesse grows more intrigued by Lama Dorje's story, worrying his father, who fears that Jesse will become obsessed with the idea of being a reincarnation. The next day, Jesse's mother drops him off at the temple. There, Jesse is presented with several identical bowls, yet he instinctively selects the correct one, Lama Dorje's bowl. Impressed, Lama Norbu continues reading to him. The movie transitions back to Siddhartha, who finally leaves the palace to see the city. However, the king orchestrates everything so that the prince only witnesses youth and beauty. As Siddhartha walks through the lively streets, people call out his name, dance, and celebrate. Then, through the crowd, he notices an elderly man, something he has never seen before.
Who are those men? And why do they look like that?
They are old, my lord.
What do you mean, old?
He learns that aging is inevitable and that one day he too will grow old. As he follows the man, he begins seeing the harsh realities of life. People toiling in labor, the sick suffering in agony, and finally, a funeral where a body is being cremated, its ashes drifting into the river. His servant explains the meaning of death, and Siddhartha is shaken, overwhelmed by sorrow.
When a body grows cold and stiff like wood, it has to be burnt like wood.
Later, when Dean arrives to pick up Jesse, he makes it clear that he does not believe in reincarnation. Lama Norbu explains that if Jesse is confirmed as Lama Dorje's reincarnation, he could become a powerful figure for Tibetan society. However, he reassures Dean that Jesse can choose a normal life if he wishes. To be certain, they plan to take Jesse to Bhutan to consult with experts. Just then, Lama Norbu receives news that another possible reincarnation candidate has been found, a young boy from Kathmandu. Jesse's father, visibly displeased with the situation, leaves abruptly. The movie returns to ancient India, where Siddhartha confronts his father about hiding the truth of suffering from him. The king insists that he must focus on ruling the kingdom. At that moment, Siddhartha learns that he has a newborn son. Despite this, he remains resolute in his mission to break the cycle of life and death. As he walks away, the king, fearing that Siddhartha will leave, orders the palace gates locked and instructs the guards to stop him by force if necessary. On the way home, Dean receives devastating news. His best friend has passed away. Meanwhile, Jesse sits on a bridge, opening the book and reading once more. The story shifts back to Siddhartha, who visits his newborn son and wife. He finds that everyone in the palace has fallen into a deep, magical sleep, except for him. He quietly wakes his servant and orders him to bring his horse to the gates. As Siddhartha departs under the cover of darkness, his long journey of awakening begins. He ventures deep into the wilderness, where he encounters a group of ascetics, men who have sworn never to leave the forest until they attain enlightenment. Determined to leave behind his former life, Siddhartha cuts off his hair and hands his jewelry to his loyal servant, Channa. He then encounters a beggar, to whom he gives his royal robes before walking into the forest alone. For years, Siddhartha meditates in solitude. A great serpent coils around him, shielding him from the rain. Witnessing this miraculous sight, 5 ascetics recognize his spiritual power and become his first disciples. Back in the present, Dean and his wife return home from his friend's funeral. Dean tells his wife that Jessie should go to Bhutan, but she strongly disagrees. However, Dean insists that it may be time for Jessie to decide his own path, just as he too must figure out his own purpose in life. Ultimately, they decide to embark on the journey together. On the plane, while everyone sleeps, Lama Norbu explains the importance of meditation to Jessie. He tells him that if one learns to meditate properly, they can reach enlightenment. The story returns to Siddhartha, who has now spent 6 years in the forest, enduring extreme self-discipline. Along with his followers, he attempts to conquer suffering by strengthening his mind to the point of forgetting his physical needs. One day, he overhears an old musician explaining how a lute string must not be too tight or too loose to produce a perfect sound. At that moment, Siddhartha realizes that he has been following the wrong path. Barely able to walk due to his weakened body, he stumbles to the river and drinks, cleansing himself. A kind village girl offers him a bowl of rice, which he eats. Witnessing this, the 5 ascetics feel betrayed and abandon him.
We can no longer learn from you.
To learn is to change. The path to enlightenment is in the middle way.
After finishing his meal, Siddhartha places the empty bowl into the river, saying, "If I am destined to attain enlightenment, let this bowl float upstream." Miraculously, it does. The movie then shifts back to Jessie, his father, and the monks arriving in Kathmandu to meet another reincarnation candidate, a boy named Raju. As Jessie walks through a crowded pagoda, he stops to watch a group of children performing. Raju approaches him, asking him money for their performance. Jessie claims he have no money, then Raju borrowed his Game Boy. Playing a Game Boy, suddenly, another boy snatches the device and runs off. Jessie and Raju chase after him, and Raju eventually retrieves Jessie's Game Boy. Jessie then introduces Raju to his father, and Lama Norbu informs them that they must now travel to meet their final candidate. The next morning, they embark on a long journey. When their car breaks down, they are greeted by a woman and a young girl named Gita, the third candidate. Unlike the others, Gita is skeptical and immediately challenges both Jessie and Raju, calling them fake Lama Dorjes. She then leads them to her secret garden. Inside the house, Lama Norbu learns that Gita's family had been devoted supporters of Lama Dorje for generations, regularly making donations. Years ago, Lama Dorje himself visited their home and stayed for 2 days. Before leaving, he touched Gita's mother's belly in blessing. Months after his passing, her mother became pregnant with Gita. As Gita grew older, she began chanting Sanskrit in her sleep, an unusual phenomenon that further convinced her family of her spiritual significance. Later, Lama Norbu continues Siddhartha's story, bringing Jessie, Raju, and Gita near the Bodhi tree. Here, Siddhartha finally discovers the middle path, neither extreme luxury nor extreme suffering. As he meditates beneath the tree, 5 beautiful women appear. They are the daughters of Mara, the Lord of Darkness, and embody pride, greed, fear, ignorance, and desire. They try to seduce and distract Siddhartha, but he remains unmoved. Frustrated, Mara himself appears, summoning storms, strong winds, lightning, and fireballs to break Siddhartha's concentration. But nothing sways him. Then Mara sends a vast army to attack, firing arrows at the prince. Yet, as they reach him, the arrows transform into flower petals. Finally, Siddhartha confronts his own reflection in the water, seeing his ego before dismissing it, declaring, "You do not exist." At that moment, he attains enlightenment. He sees beyond both pain and joy, achieving a great calm that frees him from illusions. From that day forward, he is known as the Buddha, the Awakened One. Back in Bhutan, Jesse feels apprehensive as they approach the temple. His father and his friends reassure him, encouraging him to step forward. The monks warmly greet them, and Jesse sees young monks playing in the courtyard. Lama Norbu invites Jesse, Raju, and Gita to join in. As the experts examine the children, they present them with 3 identical red hats and ask them to choose Lama Dorjes. All 3 select the same one. Unable to determine the reincarnation, they decide to consult an oracle. Lama Norbu emerges from the oracle's chamber and approaches each child one by one. He expresses his happiness at finding them again, but when it is Jesse's turn, Jesse instinctively bows in sync with Lama Norbu, something the others did not do. This small action hints that Jesse may be the true reincarnation. Ultimately, it is revealed that all 3 children are separate reincarnations of Lama Dorje, an incredibly rare occurrence. Jesse, Raju, and Gita each embody a different aspect of their teacher's soul. Later, Dean finds Lama Norbu weak and frail. The monk hands him Lama Dorje's bowl, saying that it is meant for Jesse. He also gives Dean his watch, stating that his work is now complete. That night, Lama Norbu retreats into the prayer room. He begins meditating and chanting as the night passes. The following day, the monks and Dean check on him and realize that his spirit has left his body. At the same time, Jesse, Raju, and Gita hear Lama Norbu's spirit calling them, guiding them with his chants. Later, at a dock, Jesse and his mother prepare to scatter Lama Norbu's ashes into the sea. As Lisa stands, it is revealed that she is pregnant. Meanwhile, in different locations, Raju and Gita perform the same ritual, each releasing Lama Norbu's ashes into the water. The movie ends with Jesse and his family standing by the sea, saying their final farewell as Lama Norbu's ashes drift into the waves.